Mock Draft Monday, the 3 best words in all of YouTube. I hope you guys are excited for another mock draft this week. And this one is a little bit different. I want to explain it here, break it down for you guys so you know what you're watching, know what you're looking for in this video. And it's a fun one that I'm very, very proud of, especially with the community that we have here at Utility Sports. You guys see it in the live streams, and you see it in the Discord server, which I want you to go join right now. That link is at the very top of the description. Go click that link. Go join the Discord server if you want to be a part of future events like what you see in this video, because this is a 2025 NBA mock draft with trades. But the special little caveat in this video, teams were run by different users in the Discord server. These are not just my mock selections. Now, I did run a team. I ran the Milwaukee Bucks in this full 2-round mock draft with trades, but I didn't even make picks. I made a big trade with some of the fellow users in that Discord server. So special shoutouts as well to Baglin and Texas Sports, as well as the other moderators for their continued work down in that Discord server. Again, please come join. So I hope you guys do enjoy. If you do, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more future content. Without further ado, let's jump into it here. First overall, the Dallas Mavericks on the clock here. And making the selection for Dallas was Melverk, a big-time Dallas Mavericks fan. Shout out to Melverk, and very point-blank obvious with the first overall pick in the 2025 Utility Sports Discord mock draft. Melverk here selected Cooper Flagg out of Duke. I think this was a no-brainer decision for him, one that he didn't have to really ponder or question too much. Cooper Flagg will be the first overall pick by the Dallas Mavericks in the 2025 NBA draft. Even in a mock draft with trades, the Dallas Mavericks will not, should not, cannot afford to entertain any idea of trading the first overall pick. Cooper Flagg, I think landing in Dallas, first of all, is a blessing from the basketball gods for the Dallas Mavericks. This is a franchise that really did not deserve this first overall pick, but the fan base really did. After a devastating trade in February that sent Luka Doncic to Los Angeles, the Mavericks lucked into a 1.8% chance at the first overall pick. Now, some will say it's rigged. I really don't believe that. It's hard to rig an ACL tear for Kyrie Irving. It's hard to rig an injury to Anthony Davis, although we've seen that in the past with him getting hurt quite a bit. I just think all things considered here for Dallas, Nico Harrison and the Mavericks organization really did luck into this selection. A 1.8% chance isn't 0%. They happen to have the right combination of ping pong balls drawn, and now they get to have Cooper Flagg, and I think this is a very good landing spot for him, all things considered, because this is a roster that is ready to compete right now. I do think Cooper Flagg will be a top 40-ish player in the world in his rookie season. There will be, of course, moments and stretches where he's still going through the learning process. You think about maybe hitting that rookie wall after 45, 50 games, a longer season than Cooper Flagg's ever played throughout high school and college. There might be some growing pains along the way, but I do think Dallas specifically is a great landing spot, giving him some offensive freedom with the ball in his hands. We've talked about at length this cycle, his growth as a player, specifically from who he was 5 years ago as a prospect in Maine, where he was more of a defensive-minded player at that point in time as a 9th grader, 10th grader in high school. Then he goes to Montverde Academy, where they put the ball in his hands, tell him, hey, we're looking for you to continue growing as an individual player, and we still think we can win with you playing in that way. That's exactly what Montverde did. They won, and they won at a very high level continuously. Cooper Flagg really ushered in a lot of his own development on the ball, and I think this can be a continuation of that, where at Duke played point guard essentially for long stretches for the Duke Blue Devils, and I think Dallas, especially with Kyrie Irving out to start the year, can afford to give Cooper Flagg some of that same opportunity to be a lead ball handler, decision maker for them, especially early in his rookie season with no Kyrie Irving on the roster because of injury. Now we move on to pick number 2 for the San Antonio Spurs, and making this selection for the Spurs and running their draft as a whole is Nico Returns. Let's take it over to Nico to announce this selection.
With the second pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Dylan Harper from Rutgers.
So, Nico and the San Antonio Spurs take Dylan Harper. If you want to know more about Dylan Harper's fit with San Antonio, I have a deep dive breakdown over 32 minutes of film evaluation discussing his fit in San Antonio and talking about his strengths and weaknesses as a prospect. So if you want a deep dive video, if you're a big time Spurs fan, go check that out on the channel. It's a very in-depth breakdown on a player who can play on the wing. This is someone who has been effective without the ball in his hands. Ranked 91st percentile as a spot-up catch-and-shoot guy. Very effective attacking closeouts. Has the ball handling capabilities to do more. And I think anytime you're looking at drafting, especially in the top 2 or 3 picks, talent should trump everything. But I also think the Harper fit in San Antonio is quite smooth. They have another big guard in the backcourt with Stephon Castle, someone who I do project to be more of a wing. If you go back to my 2024 draft evaluation, of course, there were reports and rumors saying that Stephon Castle only wanted to be a point guard, wanted to get drafted somewhere where he could be a point guard. And at the time, I thought that was a little silly because I thought the best way to maximize him is using him on the wing and as a secondary creator. And now I think for San Antonio, after going out and trading for De'Aaron Fox, having Stephon Castle, if you come here, draft Dylan Harper second overall, this is a really strong pick, one that solidifies their roster, specifically in the backcourt. Now they have such a plethora of ball handling, decision making. The best teams in the league have multiple guys who can make plays off of a live dribble, make reads, weaponize team defenses in a certain way, and Dylan Harper does a lot of that here. So for the Spurs, this is an A-plus pick. Nico didn't overthink it, made the right selection for the Spurs at number 2. Moving on to pick 3, but before that, we have a huge trade to announce, the very first trade of the video, and it centers around the Brooklyn Nets and Philadelphia 76ers. In this trade, there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of salary. Ultimately, the Brooklyn Nets eat Paul George's contract and walk away with the 3rd overall pick in this year's draft. Now, Philadelphia gets quite a strong return, in my opinion, here for these 2 pieces, for Paul George's contract and pick number 3. Philadelphia walks away with Nick Claxton. Think about Joel Embiid's injury history. Think about how bad at times the Sixers can be when Joel Embiid's off the floor. Getting a rim-protecting big like Nick Claxton to play big minutes when Embiid is out and then play significantly less minutes when Embiid is healthy. You know, it's a little weird. The fit with Claxton and Embiid together probably isn't great on the court at all. But I do think for the moments that Embiid's either out of the game or just flat out missing games, Claxton can be a real contributor. Cam Johnson, of course, is the big part of this deal for Philly. Yes, they're giving up the guy that they just maxed out last offseason in Paul George, but they're getting a player who fits better, plays better off the catch, is a better spot-up catch-and-shoot guy, and he's more willing to do those things. I think Paul George, extremely talented, but he's, for the most part of his career, been at his best playing on the basketball. And I think at times in LA, we saw him struggle being more of an off-ball contributor rather than an on-ball contributor. And I think for Cam Johnson specifically, the fit here in Philadelphia around Embiid, Maxey, McCain, and Claxton now, of course, as well being there, is just smoother. And I think this does increase the depth here for Philadelphia because in addition to those 2 players, they also get 2 first-round picks this year, picks number 19 and 26 in this draft, and a first-round pick in 2027 via Philadelphia. An important note on the trades, too. We did moderate trades. We limited every team to 1 trade per team. Not every single team made a trade, of course, but there was a limit in place. So Philadelphia, Brooklyn at this point cannot make any more trades now in this video. But this is a strong one that puts Brooklyn at pick number 3, and Philadelphia reinvents themselves and gets off of that Paul George contract. And I think for Brooklyn, if they're looking at it from a perspective of Paul George, they're hoping, hey, maybe he can be a big bounce back player for us going into this season in a different team context where he's more focal and centered to their team context offensively. So with that 3rd overall pick now, the Brooklyn Nets are on the clock. Let's take it away to their team GM, Agapito D'Souza, with the pick.
With the 3rd pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Brooklyn Nets select Ace Bailey.
So with the Brooklyn Nets selecting Ace Bailey 3rd overall here, Brooklyn takes a big swing on some perceived upside, a guy who did exert and showcase some significant shot making in his lone season of college basketball for Rutgers, and he's going to be staying right there in that Metro Atlantic area with Brooklyn. And I think specifically for the Brooklyn Nets, for a team that clearly with this decision to trade for pick 3, give up Cam Johnson, give up Nick Claxton. They're clearly punting in this scenario on the upside possibility of going out into free agency, drastically improving the team, making some big win-now trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and clearly taking the longer approach, drafting a player who is definitely not NBA ready on day one of his NBA career to be a positive contributor. In fact, he wasn't even a positive contributor in college. He had a negative net rating for Rutgers, despite fellow five-star freshman Dylan Harper having a +8 net rating. So when Rutgers had Dylan Harper on the court, they were actually quite a bit better than their opponents. And when they had just flat out Ace Bailey on the court, they were not better than their opponents. Very point blank and simple. It's about as simple as it can get. Now, is that the best way to really evaluate prospects? Definitely not. There are some things Ace Bailey does very, very well. And I think there are some things that need to change as well. His play style, 99th percentile in isolation volume this past year for Rutgers. I really don't think in the NBA you're going to be successful with him being a super high isolation volume player. I think he needs to really alter and adjust his game offensively to being more of an off-ball cut, dive, play off the catch, attack closeouts, go, shoot over the top of defenders in rotation. That's really where you're going to find the value from me in Ace Bailey. And I think specifically that does lower his ceiling quite a bit. But I just don't really trust the functional play strength. And I think defensively too, there is a lot to harness here. I think if you're looking at Ace Bailey, the two-way potential is pretty significant because of his physical gifts, the application of those gifts on the defensive glass and offensive glass. He's a very good rebounder of the basketball for his position, which is going to be probably small forward. I look at him as a wing, maybe even playing the 2 a little bit, which sounds crazy, but I do think that's functionally what he can be. And then when it comes down to defensive upside, like, he does make plays. He can block shots in transition. He can be a weak side helper. He can make incredible closeouts out onto the perimeter with his length and size and athletic tools. But at the same time, there are a lot of lapses in judgment and a lot of lapses in attention to detail, where he's helping off of shooters at times for Rutgers, or where he's getting caught as the low man and ball watching and gives up a wide open corner 3. I think there's a lot of room for Ace Bailey to grow yet. This is the thing. He's a young player. So I think if you're looking at it for Brooklyn, this is not a, hey, year 1, year 2, we're hoping for greatness. We're looking at year 3, year 4 being really the beginning of the telltale signs of what Ace Bailey really will be in his NBA career. Moving on to pick number 4 now, the Charlotte Hornets on the clock here, and making this selection for Charlotte is Luka Magic 125. Clearly, with his eyes set on Dallas landing Cooper Flagg, we'll see who he goes with here. 4th overall for the Charlotte Hornets. In this selection, he selects VJ Edgecombe out of Baylor with the 4th overall pick in the 2025 Utility Sports Discord mock draft. Remember, go join that Discord if you want to be a part of future events like this one. And I think VJ Edgecombe is a very good fit here for the Charlotte Hornets. I think specifically if you're looking to tap into his two-way potential, there are so many physical tools and traits to work with. We just got done talking about Ace Bailey's physical gifts. I think VJ Edgecombe, even a superior athlete to Bailey. Now, he's not quite as tall and long as Ace Bailey is, but he is extremely, extremely athletic, gets off the floor very, very quickly. He is the definition of a quick leaper, but he doesn't just leap quickly, he also leaps explosively. He can jump into traffic, can play into contact, can play into physicality. He's got a pretty good strong base to his body already with a good strong frame when you look at his shoulders and his body type, archetype. I think there's a lot that he's going to be able to kind of polish up in his game from a skill set perspective, because the physical gifts are there to be an NBA athlete and an NBA player. For me, I've kind of pivoted throughout the course of the cycle. At points, I see some of that Dennis Smith Jr. in his game, where I think his value is going to be actually best suited on the defensive side of the ball, at point of attack, with his mirror skills and physical play strength, ability to navigate screens. I think there's a lot to work with there. Now, I think technically speaking, he needs to improve the actual technique to his defensive game. And again, the attention to detail has been prone a little bit to mental lapses too, like Ace Bailey. So I think there's room to grow for him defensively. And then offensively, you know, he's toyed with a handle a bit. I really don't trust the handle at this point to be a real tool to create advantage consistently. But I do think there's a semblance of something there. And I think if you're trying to bet on the upside, Charlotte, who needs more downhill athleticism, needs more rim pressure, rim force, and I think Edgecombe landing into a situation to play around the shooting of LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, actually works out quite well for what the Hornets are probably looking to add into their offense, which is a little bit more drive and kick potential, a little bit more backside cutting, and lob potential as well out of their backcourt, and Edgecombe provides them that here at pick number 4. Moving on to pick number 5, the Utah Jazz. Just a little bit of a disclaimer. They were very active in this mock draft, all things considered. And running the team here in this was Bears owner 54, someone who has a little bit of love here for Tyreke Stevenson. I may or may not have had to done some inspect element cleanup there on that username. But 5th overall here for Utah. Let's take it away with Bear and see where the Utah Jazz ultimately go.
With the 5th pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the Utah Jazz will select Kasparas Jakucionis from the University of Illinois.
So 5th overall, Utah walks away with Kasparas Jakucionis out of Illinois. And I think specifically for the Utah Jazz, while yes, they have tried to address the backcourt in previous drafts. Think about drafting Keyonte George in the middle of the first round in his class. You think about last year, taking Isaiah Collier at the back end of the first round in 2024. The Jazz have attempted to patch up this backcourt and draft young players with some upside. Keyonte George, of course, is a combo scoring guard. Think about Isaiah Collier as a playmaker. I think you're really getting the better of both worlds here, taking Jakucionis at pick number 5. He is a very experienced ball handler, and it showed up time and time again for the Fighting Illini this past year, whether it was working with Tomislav Ivicic, whether it was working with some of Illinois' traditional rim running big men, or if you look at, even some ghost screens with Will Riley setting screens or playing off of Kylan Boswell a bit. I think Jakucionis is just a very adept guard when it comes to getting to certain spots on the floor, making reads, and weaponizing some of his solid positional size, measured in about 6'6" with shoes on at the NBA Combine. And I think going forward for Jakucionis, while yes, there are some athletic concerns and questions here, Utah needs someone who can handle the ball, look to score the ball. He has a very good three-point rate and has a really great stride stop. So even when he doesn't get all the way to the rim, there are ways for him to score the basketball, which I think he will rely on early in his NBA career. I also think his playmaking, feel for the game, IQ, all pays off in a big way around Lauri Markkanen, around Walker Kessler. Now we'll see who's ultimately there to stay for Utah. There might be a big trade coming, just a little bit of a forewarning here. But I think for Jakucionis specifically landing in Utah, this gives them a true point guard, someone that I actually really do trust to have the ball in his hands. He can play off the ball. I think there's not been enough discussion around his activity without the ball in his hands. He wants to cut, he wants to play off of DHOs, and he works extremely hard to get himself open in those actions and in those off-ball context settings. So I think all things considered here for Utah, while it's not a huge sexy pick, it's not one that screams 20-plus point per game scoring potential probably. It gives you, I think, an infrastructural piece moving forward that will really help your team actually start to win games. I think one of the best testaments for Utah Jazz basketball and the value of good point guard play was Mike Conley. Remember the first year Will Hardy was the coach there after the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert trades. The Jazz were actually very competitive at the start of Will Hardy's tenure there. And then they traded Mike Conley at the trade deadline. Of course, brought in more draft capital. That was part of the Russell Westbrook Lakers trade, sent D'Angelo Russell to LA. That trade really blew up the Utah Jazz. And it was just Mike Conley. And, I don't say it as, it's just Mike Conley like he's not a great player. It's just Mike Conley in terms of, hey, he's not a 20-point per game scorer, but he impacts winning. And I think for Utah specifically, if you want to start winning, if you want to improve this team actually at some point in time, you have to draft guys who I think will impact winning. And Kasparas Jakucionis, for me, is a player who's going to be capable of doing that in the NBA. Moving on to pick number 6. Running the Washington Wizards in this Discord mock draft was Unlimited, who is a big-time Washington Wizards fans. And Wizards fans, trust me, I think you're in good hands here, especially with this first decision at pick number 6. Unlimited here in the Washington Wizards in the 2025 Utility Sports Discord mock draft select Derik Queen out of Maryland. One of my favorite prospects in this entire class. Currently sits at number 3 on my 2025 NBA draft big board. And I think for Queen specifically, landing in Washington, this gives the Wizards a very dynamic front court. One that has a bunch of upside to play into offensively and a pretty unique defensive combination as well. We'll start on the offensive side of the basketball though. Queen's ability to play out of delay action as a trail big man, someone who can push the ball up the court himself, get it and go, I think creates a lot of mismatch problems for other Eastern Conference teams with Queen's size specifically. And you think about the context of the East, where a majority of the teams are a little bit smaller than the West counterparts. For Boston, obviously Jason Tatum's out now, but he's predominantly been the power forward for them. You think about New York, well, yes, they have experimented a little bit with double big lineups with Mitch Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns. You also think about OG Anunoby playing the forward. Not that he's a terribly small player, but he's not a big. And I think Derek Queen, going into some of those matchups, if you have him next to Alex Sarr, it does give you some positional advantages when it comes to, hey, do we want to post up Derek Queen against a forward instead of a big man? Or, hey, Alex Sarr's got a forward on him now, and that means Derek Queen's getting guarded by a center. And I think Queen's foot speed specifically gives them some advantage as well against that. I do have a breakdown for Derek Queen up on the channel. I definitely recommend checking that out. And when it comes to specifically the defensive side of the floor for Washington, I think Queen, his ability to challenge out on the perimeter, move his feet pretty well. I know, listen, people are going to say, well, he tested so bad at the combine, this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, but did you watch the games? Are we drafting track and field athletes or are we drafting basketball players? Derek Queen was a dominant basketball player all year long for Maryland. Had a plus 25 net rating this year for the Terrapins. He was basically one of the sole reasons this team was really any good this year. Yes, he had a little bit of talent around him. Gillespie, Reese, of course, in the front court. There was some talent there at Maryland, but really Derek Queen was the one who solidified, cemented everything. And I think a big reason why Kevin Willard's now the coach at Villanova is because Derek Queen was so brilliant, dominant, and good as a true freshman for the Maryland Terrapins. And I think staying there in the DMV area with the Washington Wizards, I think this is just flat out a very, very, very good pick for Washington at pick number 6. Now we move on to pick number 7, and running the team here for the New Orleans Pelicans was yours nightmare. And I think this is a very fascinating spot. Let's take it away and see where he ultimately goes at pick number 7.
With the 7th pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the New Orleans Pelicans select Trey Johnson.
So Trey Johnson in this mock draft falls maybe a spot or two further than what we've been accustomed to seeing in some of my own mock drafts. Remember, this is not me making these picks, so things will look a little bit different, but I think this is a very helpful exercise as well. There's always some surprises on the real draft night, and I think doing this kind of emulation or simulation of a draft event does give us some ideas of possible outcomes that maybe we haven't considered a ton. And Trey Johnson falling down to pick number 7 here gives the Pelicans another elite movement shooter. Remember, a few years ago, they drafted Jordan Hawkins at pick number 14. We've seen the Pelicans look for scoring and shooting out on the perimeter, and after trading away Brandon Ingram specifically to the Toronto Raptors at the trade deadline this past February, I think New Orleans could be in line to add another wing player capable of creating his own shot off the dribble, something he did very well at the University of Texas this past year, where he shot over 40% from 3 on off the dribble attempts. And Trey Johnson's offensive scoring upside really does leave a lot of excitement for teams, executives, GMs. Trey Johnson, for me, on my most recent NBA draft big board, was ranked 5th. And I think for the Pelicans specifically here, a team that does look to play into dribble handoffs, play off of zoom action, there are ways to weaponize Trey Johnson's off-ball scoring skill set, where he does a very good job getting his feet set, playing balance, and then also his on-ball scoring skill set, where he's able to create off the bounce a bit, get to spots on the floor, exercise some of his shot making as a mid-range shooter. I think there's a really good, healthy blend that they're going to be able to unlock here in New Orleans with Trey Johnson's skill set. So I think all things considered, this is a very strong pick from yours nightmare. I think this is a selection that gives a lot of functionality into the Pelicans' half-court offense, and one that has me very excited for New Orleans basketball moving forward. Pick number 8, the Brooklyn Nets on the clock. Again, remember, Agapito is still running the team. So with that in mind for Brooklyn specifically here, after going with Ace Bailey at number 3, it'll be interesting to see where Agapito goes after trading away Nick Claxton, trading away Cam Johnson, eating Paul George's contract, getting pick 3, taking Ace Bailey, and now 8th overall. Let's hear where they're going with this pick.
With the 8th pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the Brooklyn Nets select Khaman Maluach from Duke.
So, Khaman Maluach is the selection here, 8th overall by Agapito. And I think specifically Maluach, after trading away Nick Claxton, the Nets still do have Day'Ron Sharpe, a big who I do think can definitely play at the NBA level and be a positive impact contributor. Maluach is another big who can protect the rim for them. And I think this does fit very well into Jordi Fernandez's defensive scheme. In a lot of my mock drafts, I have talked about the offensive context and what could maximize Jordi Fernandez's team offense. But this is where Maluach, his rim protection, sheer size, and some of the switchability, which is not something we saw a ton of, predominantly did play in drop coverage this past year for Duke, but at times Duke was willing to allow him to switch out into space, guard out on the perimeter, and with his size, ability to challenge without fouling out on the three-point line, and some surprising foot speed, Maluach did have a very good overall track record of success when guarding out on the perimeter. And I think specifically if you're looking at the Brooklyn Nets here, after trading away Claxton, trading away Cam Johnson, clearly taking the developmental route here in this draft with both Ace Bailey and Khaman Maluach in the top 8 picks, I think Brooklyn got a lot bigger, a lot more athletic, and really added a few elements of rim protection. Maluach, of course, is going to be somewhat of an anchor, big-time shot blocker, someone who does turn away shooters at the rim, whether it's just forcing them to not even consider shooting the basketball or actually getting blocks. And then when it comes to Ace Bailey, again, I talked earlier about his ability to make impact plays as a help side guy. I think the combination of length and athleticism here in the top 8 is very fascinating for Brooklyn. Again, in most of my mocks, I have kind of avoided going with Maluach at pick number 8, but this is a great opportunity to talk about that fit, talk about some of the defensive upside value that this would bring for Brooklyn. And I do think Maluach offensively, well, it might not be the most obvious fit into Jordi Fernandez's offensive context and how he values trail bigs and delay action. Maluach did do a bit of that for Duke, and while I don't think it's the best role for him for sure offensively, his screen setting would be still invaluable. And I think Cam Thomas should be smiling ear to ear right now. Having Maluach there as a screen setter is going to make his life so much easier as a scorer for the Brooklyn Nets, assuming they keep him with his restricted free agency rights. Moving on to pick number 9, the Toronto Raptors here at this spot, and they are run by a big-time Raptors fan, Fancy Scorpion, one of the biggest Scotty Barnes believers I know. Let's take it away to Fancy Scorpion and see ultimately where he has the Raptors going with the 9th overall pick in this mock draft.
With the 9th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors select Carter Bryant from Arizona.
So, Carter Bryant was the selection here out of Arizona, and I think specifically for Toronto, a team that, and Fancy Scorpion admitted this himself, saying that he was looking for Maluach, and with Maluach off the board, he tried to facilitate a trade, couldn't find a deal that he really liked, had thought about moving down in the draft, was hoping to try and move down to pick 14, pick 15-ish, just could not get a trade done that he wanted to actually execute. So with that in mind, he just drafted a player that he thought would fit Toronto's team defensive context and identity, and that is Carter Bryant here, one of the higher upside defenders in this entire draft class, someone who measured in very well at the combine, will be a legitimate 6'7", almost 6'8" with shoes on and long arms, over a 7-foot wingspan measured at the combine. I think Carter Bryant specifically, a very low usage player for Arizona, but someone who did find success when he was utilized. Despite just a 16.7% usage rate, he flexed a 70% plus rim half-court finishing metric, which is very, very strong. Was very good at the rim in the half-court as a cutter, as a play finisher, and of course, a lot of that stems from his athletic tools, which are very functional, allows him to finish at and above the rim at a high level. And then he also shot the 3-ball very well throughout the course of the season for Arizona, which is what really solidified a lot of the viewpoints on him and perspectives on his fit into the NBA as a 3-and-D wing with finishing skills. I think for Toronto specifically, this is a guy who athletically fits kind of the profile you would imagine Masai Ujiri looking to draft. And while, listen, I don't think this addresses a lot of their offensive needs yet, and I don't think this really changes their spacing context too much, I do think he fits their team. And especially what they're trying to do defensively, which by the end of the season last year, they had really ticked upward defensively. So for Toronto, I do think grabbing Carter Bryant here 9th overall, while it's maybe not the consensus viewpoint, it's a very interesting one to talk about, and one that I do think makes the Raptors better right now and long term if Bryant is able to uncover some of that potential as a 3-and-D player in the league. Moving into pick 10, we have a huge trade to announce. Let's take it over to Bear, who's going to break down this trade now.
The Utah Jazz have made a trade with the Houston Rockets. The Utah Jazz are sending the Houston Rockets Lauri Markkanen, Collin Sexton, a 2029 second-round pick, a 2030 second-round pick via the Clippers. In return, the Utah Jazz will be receiving Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, Jock Landale, Cam Whitmore, pick number 10, a 2025 second-round pick this draft, pick 60, and a 2028 first-round pick via the Houston Rockets.
Wow, what a trade. One that sends Lauri Markkanen to the Houston Rockets. So Utah, after drafting Kasparas Jakucionis at pick number 5, they have agreed to trade away one of their best play finishers in Lauri Markkanen. They also trade the now expiring contract of Collin Sexton and 2 far-out second-round picks in 2029 and 2030 in order to acquire a litany of draft assets and young players. In this deal, they come away with pick number 10, which is, of course, the next pick in this mock draft. They also walk away with a pick in the second round, pick number 60. They also get a future first-round pick via Houston. They, in addition to those 3 draft capital pieces, get Jalen Green, the former number 2 overall pick, in the same draft as Cade Cunningham in 2021. They also walk away with Dillon Brooks, someone who is an impact contributor. And I think for Utah specifically, one of the biggest needs for this roster is improving the defensive side of the ball. While they could look to reroute Dillon Brooks hypothetically, remember in this mock draft we were limiting teams to just 1 trade. So Dillon Brooks will be staying in Utah in this trade package. Jock Landale comes over as salary purpose. And then Cam Whitmore, another young player, someone who, coming out of Villanova, had a lot of scoring potential, has lived up to that in the NBA where he's been scoring very effectively on a permanent basis. The question for him is, can he really tie everything together as an offensive player? The facilitating, the passing selection, and the shot selection as a whole are still things that need to improve. But the Jazz walk out of this with pick 10. They get a few young players in Cam Whitmore, Jalen Green. They get Dillon Brooks, someone who can really help their team defense immediately. I do think this is a very, very strong trade for the Jazz, one that changes the direction of their team. It's not the maximized package they could have gotten for Lauri Markkanen a few years ago, but with how Lauri Markkanen played most recently and his new contract that he's on, I think the value has diminished pretty significantly. I think had they traded him before the extension, they could have gotten a package quite comparable to what ultimately Mikal Bridges got the Brooklyn Nets this past summer. They didn't act that way. They didn't operate in that fashion and that timeliness. So instead now they settle for this kind of package. And I think for Houston, just breaking it down for the Rockets quick, because Rockets fans are going to want to know after trading pick 10, is this worth it? I think Lauri Markkanen is a brilliant fit for Houston. This is a player who can really shoot the 3 ball, plays off the catch extremely well, can still attack closeouts, very functional offensively, playing off of other players. I think a great fit with Sengun. And one of the things I love the most about this for Houston, this team has found a ton of success playing big. They want to have length and size on the court. You think about the double big lineups with Sengun and Steven Adams. Now you're adding a 6'10", near 7 foot forward into the mix, and this one can really shoot the basketball. And I think for Houston specifically, this doesn't jeopardize their team defense at all. I think, well, yes, Lauri Markkanen had a poor defensive year this past year for Utah. I think in a better team defensive context like Houston has, he's just going to be much more impactful defensively than he could be in Utah, given who the guards were specifically in that backcourt. I think Sexton can really provide some of that scoring off the bench that they're now going to be losing after trading Jalen Green. It's about 60% of your scoring production now coming off the bench instead of having Jalen Green in the starting lineup. This gives them the very clear opportunity to start Amen Thompson as well. And I think all things considered here, Houston gets a lot better right now, and the Utah Jazz change the direction of their franchise, get some meaningful draft capital, and I think Jalen Green really can score the ball. Cam Whitmore can really score the ball. Very interesting fits off of Kasparas Jakucionis there moving forward. So now let's get into pick number 10, and let's go back to hear from Bear. Let's hear who the Utah Jazz are going to select with the 10th overall pick in the 2025 NBA mock draft.
With the 10th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Utah Jazz will be selecting Knueppel from the University of Duke.
Bear does not allow Knueppel to fall too far. A player who I thought very likely could have gone in the top 8 or 9 picks in this draft falls down to pick number 10 here. And the Utah Jazz, after making a big trade to trade Lauri Markkanen to Houston, the Rockets, who could have definitely utilized this shooting from Knueppel, would have been a great fit with the Rockets, now ultimately finds his way to Utah. And I think for the Jazz specifically, yes, while you did trade Lauri Markkanen away, you do still have a variety of different play finishers off of your new point guard in Kasparas Jakucionis. And I think the Jazz are actually really set up well now after not only this most recent trade of Lauri Markkanen, but their 2 top 10 picks of Jakucionis and Knueppel. You think about their lineup versatility. You've got Jakucionis, you've got Knueppel, you've got Jalen Green as a scorer, Cam Whitmore as a scorer. You obviously have Dylan Brooks now on the wings as well. Of course, Cody Williams is still someone that they're going to bank on that long-term development for if you're Utah. I think Knueppel fits like a glove here into the Jazz offense, though. They still, of course, have Walker Kessler, John Collins, and they still have another pick in the first round here to utilize yet too. So I think all things considered for the Utah Jazz, this is a very strong selection for them. Knueppel's combination of decisiveness, three-point shooting, and his ability to play off of 2 feet and limit turnovers fits really well as an off-ball player in the NBA. I think it's going to provide a lot of offensive functionality to Walker Kessler as an off-ball screener. And I think it opens up more opportunities for John Collins to be an on-ball screener. With Kessler drawing out bigs on opposing, wide pin action, for example, it forces bigs to have to help out on Knueppel coming off of stagger screens and pin screens. And it allows John Collins to maybe be more of an on-ball screener in those kind of contexts as well, if you're occupying the help side defense away from the ball. So I think there's a lot of value here. I think Utah would have a bunch of fun players, and it would be a really creative offense to watch going into next season if they pull off the moves that you've seen in this mock draft so far. Moving on to pick 11, we have another big trade, and this is one that I was directly involved in. Prior to pick 11, we have a trade to announce. The Milwaukee Bucks are sending star forward Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Portland Trail Blazers in a 3-team trade. The Blazers will land Giannis, Kyle Kuzma, and pick number 47 in this year's draft. New Orleans gets Robert Williams on an expiring contract and pick number 11, this upcoming pick. The Milwaukee Bucks, for Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kyle Kuzma, and pick 47, land all of the swap rights back that they owe. 2026 swap rights back from New Orleans. 2027 swap rights back from New Orleans. 2028 swap rights back from Portland. 2030 swap rights back from Portland. They also get a 2029 unprotected first-round pick, which will be the most favorable of Trailblazers, Bucks, or Celtics. They get a 2031 unprotected first via Portland. They get second-round picks in 2027 via Minnesota, 2029 via either Indiana or Washington, 2030 via the New York Knicks, 2031 via the Portland Trailblazers. They also, in the deal, on top of 10 total draft picks, get DeAndre Ayton's expiring contract, Kelly Olynyk's expiring contract, Matisse Thybulle's expiring contract, the rookie contract of Scoot Henderson, the rookie contract of Chris Murray, and the expiring contract of Ryan Rupert. For me specifically, I want to break down my rationale in making this specific trade for Milwaukee, because some people are going to look at this and say, you didn't make a trade with Houston. You didn't get Alperen Şengün. You didn't get Jalen Green. You didn't get Jabari Smith Jr. You didn't get this, that, or the other thing. And I understand that perspective. The issue I continue to run into as I was picturing trades Milwaukee should make, trades that I would make if I was Milwaukee, it feels really, really bad trading Giannis Antetokounmpo away when you don't have control of your own future draft capital. It's going to be hard to replace Giannis Antetokounmpo and his impact on winning. I really think for Milwaukee specifically, if they trade Giannis, they're not going to win a lot of games. It's very point-blank analysis, very simple. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. No matter who they get, if they got even Alperen Şengün, I don't think that Bucks roster, especially with Damian Lillard on a torn Achilles, is going to be built to win. So instead, what I wanted to do was get expiring salaries. I wanted to open up long-term cap flexibility, which either gives the Bucks the opportunity to trade for bad contracts to get draft capital, or to go out into free agency and try and improve their team while they draft some young players moving forward, like what we saw Houston do with Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks a couple of seasons ago. I think for Milwaukee specifically, this is a great opportunity to re-net their draft capital. And I do think Portland is kind of a sleeping giant when it comes to a Giannis trade. The Blazers do own a lot of future Bucks draft capital from the Damian Lillard trade initially. The Blazers, a lot more competitive down the stretch of the season. They want to be a defense-first team. If they acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo, their defensive frontcourt with Toumani Camara, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Donovan Clingan is very, very formidable. And I think specifically for Milwaukee here, while you might be saying, well, you didn't get Denny Avdia, you didn't get Toumani Camara, you didn't get this. For me, those players are extremely valuable, but I think they're valuable in certain team contexts. Getting Denny Avdia, I think, elevates the floor of the Bucks a bit too much. And for me, I'm really focused on trying to secure top 5 picks. If the Bucks do have the worst record in the NBA, they are guaranteed a top 5 pick next year. So getting my 2026 first, 2027 first, 2028, 2029 first back, having access to additional draft capital in totality, there's so many draft picks in here, second round picks, looking at a future pick from Portland as well, 2031. It's a great, great deal. Well, yes, I know I didn't get pick number 11 in this trade. I thought getting my picks back from New Orleans as well in the immediate future was more valuable in a rebuild. This is very similar to what Houston, Brooklyn, and New York were able to do last year, where the Nets gave up some of those Suns picks to facilitate the trade with Houston. They gave up very valuable Phoenix Suns assets to get their own future back, and this is essentially what I'm replicating here at this point in time for Milwaukee, and I think it pans out very, very well. I think going into the 2026-2027 drafts, where if Milwaukee bottoms out for a little bit, they can line themselves up for maybe Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson, Nate Ament, obviously, AJ Dabonsa is another name. And then going forward past into 2027, there's a lot of other names to be watching for. So I think all things considered, it's a big trade, it's a crazy trade, but one that I felt pretty comfortable making to get my own future back as the Milwaukee Bucks. So yours nightmare is back on the clock here with the 11th overall pick. And after going with Trey Johnson earlier, we'll see who yours nightmare takes here now with pick number 11.
With the 11th pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the New Orleans Pelicans select Noah Essengue.
Noah Essengue out of Ratio Farm Alum, someone who has a ton of believers nearing the end of this draft cycle. I'm seeing a lot of people having Noah Essengue as high as pick number 2 or number 3 warranting in this draft in terms of where they have him on their big board. Now, I don't really go out and search for big boards. I just happen to come across them on Twitter. I always try to show some love to those who are sharing them too. I do appreciate seeing other people's thoughts. I just don't actively go out and look for it. And Essengue, to me, listen, I'm not as high on him as others. I understand the idea, extremely high free throw rate, extremely gifted physically, moves very, very well. I do think there are some shortcomings in his game. I think his on-ball individual creation is not good at all. And I think if you're basing any idea of potential there, you need to see him grow as an on-ball creator, which I just don't really believe that's going to be possible for him at this point, especially given his play strength and actual ball handling skill set right now. But I do think as a play finisher, there's a ton of value here. And I think New Orleans, again, a very fun landing spot for him, playing off of guys like Trey Johnson, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum in year one. There's a lot of really good playmaking, scoring, and skills around him to amplify his game. And I think that specifically is going to stand out in a big way here for New Orleans. Well, listen, again, I'm not the highest on Essengue myself. I do see a lot of value here specifically in New Orleans team context. I think defensively, his length, fluidity out on the perimeter as a mover, and just the sheer length and size that he presents will be valuable as well. So I think all things considered for New Orleans here, walking out with 2 top 11 picks in Trey Johnson and Noah Essengue is a very, very strong outcome for them in this draft itself. Moving on to pick number 12 here, the Chicago Bulls were run by B-Ball Bry, one of the most active members in our Discord. Again, link is in the description. Go please join that Discord server if you want to be a part of future events and be a part of a great community in there that loves talking about basketball. Now, B-Ball Bry here with the 12th overall pick, the Chicago Bulls select Jeremiah Fears out of Oklahoma, a player who slid in this mock draft quite far. Remember, this is not something I think will actually happen. I do think Jeremiah Fears will be a top 6 or 7 pick in the actual draft this year, but he falls to pick number 12 here, and while it's not the most obvious fit for the Chicago Bulls, this franchise is in asset and talent acquisition mode. They need to draft players who have upside. They need to draft players who can be go-to guys, and I think Jeremiah Fears, especially down at pick number 12 here, becomes a pretty no-brainer BPA, best player available decision for them at this spot. Again, they already have some of their backcourt figured out. They traded for Josh Giddey in that Alex Caruso trade last summer. They also, of course, have Kobe White, who's really come into his own the last couple of years. Chicago is not really a point guard needy team at this point, but it's hard to pass up on the talent, especially at pick number 12 that Jeremiah Fears presents to be as a shot maker, an on-ball decision maker. I think there's a lot of playmaking feel and juice for him to grow into. And then he has a very lively handle. He can get to wherever he wants on the court pretty much at any time. Very adept at using ball screens to create advantage and can win in isolation. I think there's a lot to love here about Jeremiah Fears. I do also have some questions myself about his off-ball translation, but I think the pace that the Bulls play with and some of the surrounding playmaking could bring out the best in Jeremiah Fears as an off-ball player. He shot the ball extremely well at the combine in a spot-up role as a spot-up shooting drill participant, and I think that specifically does breathe a little bit more life into his off-ball functionality in the NBA if he just flat out is a sniper who can really shoot the lights out of the basketball. Moving on to pick number 13, Jalen Hives was running Atlanta. I think the Hawks had a very interesting mock draft. There's going to be some decisions in this one that are some head turners, just point blank, but 13th overall, that's not where the head turners start. The Hawks here with this selection do draft Thomas Sorber out of Georgetown, a big man who can really block shots and had a very impressive combine measurement where after his season concluded early with an injury, did weigh in at 260 plus pounds at the combine, which I thought was pretty surprising. But the biggest surprise was his 7'6" wingspan. Really strong wingspan measurements. And for Jalen Hives here to walk away with Thomas Sorber for Atlanta with Clint Capella as an expiring contract, the Hawks are looking for more rim protection. And you think about the improvements that this defense has made, drafting Zachary Rissache, acquiring Dyson Daniels. Their perimeter defense, their ball contain, acquiring Terrence Mann has gotten a lot better from where it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. I think to really kind of maximize and capitalize on that, adding a rim protector, someone like Thomas Sorber who had a very gaudy block rate, very impressive rim defensive field goal percentage numbers at the college level. This is a defensive upside pick that does make a ton of sense for the Atlanta Hawks. Now, I think pick 13 is a little high for Sorber myself. I wouldn't probably be comfortable taking him here at this spot, but I do understand the idea behind it. I understand the philosophy of improving your team defense quite a bit, and that did seem to be the big MO here for Jalen Hives when it came to running the Hawks at this mock draft event. Pick number 14, we are back to Nico returns here with the San Antonio Spurs. After going at pick number 2 with Dylan Harper, let's see who Nico has the Spurs taking at pick number 14 here.
With the 14th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, San Antonio Spurs select Asa Newell.
So Nico addresses the backup center need that the Spurs have by drafting Asa Newell out of Georgia, one of the best offensive rebounders in this draft and someone who has a lot of NBA executives and GMs very excited. Had a strong pro day workout where he showcased in front of 30 NBA teams and executives his ability to finish above the rim, showcase his athletic skills, showcase some emerging touch. One thing that was really prevalent for his time in his lone college season at Georgia was the touch component, whether it was shooting some float hook shots about 8 to 12 feet away from the hoop. You think about the Ivica Zubats kind of shot diet. Asa Newell showcased some of that this year, very effective as a two-point play finisher, but then also stepped out behind the three-point line a little bit, showcased somewhat of an emerging three-point shot, not something that I think is going to be a huge component of his game early in his NBA career, but does maybe paint a picture in the minds of executives of some of that long-term potential. If they draft and develop him, maybe they can grow his game a bit to be able to stretch out to the corner a little bit, or maybe knock down one three-point shot a game. It doesn't sound like a lot, but there might be a little bit of dynamism to unlock here in him as a screener, whether it's pick and long roll, pick and short roll, or pick and pop. I think there is some long-term versatility to work with, and I think for San Antonio specifically, obviously we're hoping that Wembanyama comes back healthy from his deep vein thrombosis. But I think the biggest thing here for them is assuming he is healthy, finding someone who can eat up the 15 minutes a game at center that he's not on the court. And Asa Newell can definitely do that, and I think do it at a high level with his motor, his defensive engine, his ability to get on the offensive glass, contribute to good team offense by just being a positive contributor. Nico here clearly valued size for San Antonio. Got really great positional size in Dylan Harper at pick 2, and now comes out and drafts a backup big man at pick number 14 to help anchor the Spurs defense when Wemby is off the court for San Antonio. Pick number 15, the Oklahoma City Thunder here were run by moderator Baglin. Thank you, Baglin, again for all your work in this community mock draft, organizing things, keeping everything running smoothly. Shout out to Baglin. Make sure to leave a W Baglin down in the comment section below. And 15th overall for Oklahoma City, he has the Thunder here selecting forward Collin Murray-Boyles out of South Carolina. A very strong selection for OKC, specifically with Collin Murray-Boyles falling a little bit in this mock draft. I have had him routinely mocked in the lottery around pick 11, pick 12, pick 13 range. In this mock draft, falls a little bit outside the lottery, and I think on the heels of the NBA Draft Combine where he shot it very poorly, shot just 7 of 25 on the 3-point spot-up shooting drill, I think there were some eyebrows raised, not only by GMs and executives, but of course fans. There was already a large consensus of people who had long-term concerns about Collin Murray-Boyles' fit into the NBA. Now, from the physical measurement standpoint, he did measure in very similarly to Draymond Green, who has been somewhat of a long-running comparison by many people for an NBA player that he emulates in terms of the defensive IQ, the multiple efforts, the timeliness of rotations, and then, of course, some of the playmaking feel, the connectiveness. Now, the one thing about Draymond Green is I think Draymond Green is a very, very special player, someone who his defensive impact is almost irreplaceable. I think it's going to be extremely hard for Collin Murray-Boyles to live up to that comparison. Draymond Green's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And CMB, while he's a very good player, I do think there are some limitations in this kind of play style as well. So, one thing for Draymond too, he got to play with two of the best shooters ever in Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. Both of them are great off-ball players. Would Draymond Green's career have been as good if he played with suboptimal fits? Now, I still think Draymond Green would be a great player, but again, when it comes to winning and having the right pieces around him, clearly Golden State was the best outcome. OKC doesn't have a plethora of movement shooting, but there are some ways they could use CMB. I think his cutting off of Isaiah Hartenstein would be very beneficial and valuable. The delay action there, the stretch big man play with Chet Holmgren too. I think there's a lot of ways that CMB could fit into Oklahoma City. This clearly makes their defense a lot better as well, giving them more of a true power forward physical archetype, something that I do think they have been somewhat lacking in this overall roster construction. This could help them pretty significantly in future matchups with, a team like Denver, for example. They've struggled with Aaron Gordon a lot in their second round matchup series, of course, before Gordon's injury. So getting a CMB type player, someone with this body type archetype and physical kind of profile and defensive intelligence and IQ does fit them very, very well and address something they don't have. So all in all, I do like this pick a lot by Baglin at number 15. Now we're going to move on to pick number 16, the Orlando Magic drafting here, and RTAC Magic was making the picks for Orlando in this mock draft. So let's go over to him, see who he has Orlando taking at number 16.
With the 16th pick in the NBA draft, the Orlando Magic select Rasheer Fleming.
Rasheer Fleming out of St. Joseph's, I think, is a very, very strong pick for Orlando. Not only can he shoot the basketball, something the Magic need significantly more of on their current roster construction, but he also doesn't jeopardize at all their defensive context. Rasheer Fleming can really guard, was a huge combine winner in my estimation with his overall measured wingspan, length, size. I think he impressed a lot of people at the combine. I think really his draft floor is going to be around pick 16 here. Very likely he ends up hearing his name called in the lottery. A team like San Antonio at 14 very strongly will consider it. Atlanta at 13 I think could really look at him. You even get to Chicago at 12. You look at Portland at 11 if they keep that pick. Rasheer Fleming's going to have a lot of fans, and there's going to be a lot of people watching for him in the lottery. So pick 16 might be as low as he possibly goes, but I do think for Orlando specifically, this is a very, very good outcome for him. He lands in a setting where there's a lot of length and size around him already. A very good team defense. They ranked second in the NBA this past year in defensive team rating. Now, listen, this team still has a lot of room to grow. They need to score the ball, and they need to score the ball way more effectively and efficiently and quicker. I think if they increase their offensive pace, put better shooting on the court, there's definite improvements this team can make around Banchero and Wagner. I think Rasheer Fleming is a step in the right direction, but I don't think he overarchingly changes their offense too much, and I still think there's more work to be done. We'll see if the Magic can pull it off in this mock draft with a trade a little bit down the road. Pick number 17, the Minnesota Timberwolves here were run by Nape with that sweet John Cena profile picture. Let's see who Nape has the Timberwolves going with here at pick number 17 in this mock draft.
With the 17th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves select Danny Wolf from the University of Michigan.
So Danny Wolf will have a wolf on the front and back of his jersey now in Minnesota, and I think this is a very good fit for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think Danny Wolf's combination of shooting, coordination, playmaking, and finishing skill set does fit quite well with what the Timberwolves could be looking to add long term. Now, Julius Randle has had a tremendous playoffs for himself, has really, I think, established himself as a playoff performer in ways that he wasn't believed in before, especially given his tenure with the New York Knicks and some of the shortcomings he experienced there. And with Julius Randle having a player option, will he be looking for a payday? Will Minnesota be able to give him one? There are some questions there, right? And then you also look at Naz Reid. Is Naz Reid someone who ultimately could be a cap casualty for Minnesota? And then they have Nickeil Alexander-Walker. It's very likely the Wolves will have to make some tough decisions this offseason. And Danny Wolf can be a little bit of a bridge gap for that, where he's a very skilled player, obviously has some great size as well, a true 7-footer with shoes on. This is the type of player that I think for Minnesota gives them a little bit of relief. You draft him, get him on a rookie contract for 4 years. He's going to be very affordable, cheap, skilled enough to play right away. His playmaking with another big man can complement Rudy Gobert well offensively. And I think defensively, the Wolves have the team context around him to, I think, minimize some of his shortcomings and maximize some of his intelligence and IQ. I think he's someone who competes very well defensively. He's a smart defensive player, but not someone who has the most physical gifts. And when he does make mistakes defensively, in terms of his positioning especially, he doesn't have the athletic gifts to make up for it. And I think the Wolves, with Gobert behind him, with a series of other great defenders like McDaniels, Anthony Edwards when he's locked in and engaged, Nickeil if he stays there, the Wolves have a lot of really good team defenders around him that will insulate him and protect him. And I think with that in mind, Nape was really taking that bet on that offensive skill set here for Minnesota at number 17. And I think it's one that pans out very, very well long-term for the Timberwolves with this pick. This has been one of my favorite mock selections through the entire draft process this year. Pick number 18, the Washington Wizards on the clock here, unlimited. Of course, making the picks for them like we talked about earlier after he went with Derik Queen 6th overall. Unlimited comes back here now at number 18 and selects Jase Richardson out of Michigan State, someone who is a potential faller after the combine measurements came out where he measured just 6 foot 0 inches without shoes on. Now, for me, it's not that alarming. With shoes, he'll be about 6'2". It's pretty much what I think a lot of people should have expected if you watched him play at Michigan State. I mean, by no means was anyone expecting him to measure in at like 6'4" without shoes on. It is very clearly a smaller prospect and a smaller guard. And I think some of the questions for people is, well, if he's an off-ball guard, is it okay that he measures in at just 6 foot flat without shoes on, basically? And for me, at the end of the day, like, measurements, height, like, that stuff shouldn't really change your analysis too much on prospects. Like, Jase Richardson didn't shrink from the end of Michigan State's regular season. He was that tall all college basketball season long. It didn't stop him from being a good basketball player. While yes, maybe it will be somewhat of a shortcoming in the NBA against certain matchups. You're going to lose some of that matchup versatility. There are going to be teams that can exploit that a bit. It doesn't really ultimately change who he is as a player, which is a very talented dribble, pass, shoot type prospect, can play off the ball well, can attack closeouts, can really shoot the lights out of the rock as well when you leave him open. Very comfortable coming off of a series of different actions, plays well off of DHOs, can back cut, just does a little bit of everything pretty well. with the ball in his hands as well. Someone who has showcased some dribble pull-up shot making, some ability to initiate offense as a creator for others. And I think for Washington here, well, yes, he doesn't have the great size, length. They already went with another big man here. The Wizards have a lot of defensive infrastructure in place. Last year they drafted a couple of bigger guards in Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George. They, of course, took the 7'1" Alex Sarr. They have Bilal Coulibaly from the 2023 NBA draft class. So the Wizards already are building a very unique defensive infrastructure. They drafted the 6'9" Derik Queen as well earlier in this mock draft. So the Wizards, yes, while maybe this isn't their overall draft MO, drafting a smaller guy like Jase Richardson, I do think they can afford to do so because of the amount of length and size and defensive potential they have already in place around him moving forward. Pick number 19. Philadelphia finally on the clock here. Osa Ray, after making that huge trade that ultimately sent Paul George and pick number 3 to Brooklyn, the Sixers have newfound life here with Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson, and then also a collection of other draft capital at 1926 in this draft, and then a future pick back from Philadelphia as well. 19th overall here, Osa Ray has the Philadelphia 76ers selecting Adou Thiero from Arkansas. So after drafting, after trading for Cam Johnson, someone who's a brilliant offensive fit, they get another unique offensive fit here in Adou Thiero, one of the best cutters in this entire draft. Shot over 65% at the rim in the half court this past year for Arkansas, and got to the free throw line a ton. Had a very incredible free throw rate, and I think that's a testament to his physical gifts. He is an absolute athletic specimen, and I think for the 76ers here in general, looking to add someone who can be a very positive team defender. Thiero can do all of that. He plays in the gaps well. He can be a really great nail help guy. He's mobile, athletic, big, lengthy. For long processes of this draft cycle, have compared him to OG Anunoby. I think that is a very similar player archetype that Adou Thiero can play like and play into and play similar to. And for Philadelphia, that would be hugely invaluable on both ends of the floor. As a cutter, someone who can work out of the dunker spot a bit, can play off the baseline well, and then on defense just makes a lot of things happen. Now, I think Anunoby a bit better on the ball defensively than Thiero. I think there's going to be a learning curve here for Adou Thiero when it comes to being a point of attack defender with his screen navigation yet. But all of the physical tools are good here. He rebounds the ball well. This is a very, very, very good pick for Philadelphia, in my opinion, giving this an A+ grade for sure if the Sixers pulled this off on draft night. Moving on to pick number 20. Sad Clippers fan who is a big-time NBA draft connoisseur was running the Miami Heat in this one, and let's take it away, see who he had the Heat picking at number 20.
With the 20th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Miami Heat select Egor Demin from BYU.
Egor Demin comes off the board at pick number 20 now, or as Sad Clippers fan calls him, Demon Demin at this pick, and I think he's extremely excited to bring Egor Demin to Miami. Now, here's a just quick disclaimer. Yes, crazy things happen in drafts all the time. Some things happen in ways we don't expect them. I do think Egor Demin will be a lottery pick in this draft. He falls all the way down to pick number 20 here. Clearly, the Discord community with this mock draft was a little bit more hesitant to draft him based on some of the body of work and some of the struggles he had in the Big 12 this past year. But I think an NBA team, some executives are going to look at him and see the size, see the shooting in the individual workouts, and they're going to buy on that upside. I do think on draft night he does go higher than pick number 20, but I think Sad Clippers fan here extremely excited about the opportunistic ability to draft him at 20, give the Miami Heat a playmaker, someone who is very, very long, and of course there is a lot of skill to work with here. His passing vision, passing accuracy, precision, and passing velocity I think all stand out to me in a big way. I do think the Heat are in need of point guard play. While for me Egor Demin probably isn't really a true NBA point guard. I think he's more of a point forward who can advance the ball in transition, run the pick and roll here and there, do a little bit of everything for a team offense as a connector. I do think Miami would give him the opportunity to at least try being an NBA point guard for a little while and work with the basketball in his hands. Moving on to pick 21 here, the Utah Jazz on the clock, and Bear back to making decisions for them after trading for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Cam Whitmore, draft capital, which ultimately led to Knueppel, of course, Kasparas Jakucionis at pick number 5. The Jazz here back at pick number 21, Let's see who Bear has them going with here.
With the 21st pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the Utah Jazz will be selecting Ryan Kalkbrenner from the University of Creighton.
Ryan Kalkbrenner out of Creighton. And I think specifically for Utah, this is a skilled big man to kind of supplement their front court. They did trade away Lauri Markkanen, and now looking for a long-term backup big man option behind Walker Kessler. Kalkbrenner is a very productive player, a multi-year college player who was very, very dominant in his tenure with the Creighton Blue Jays. And I think specifically when it comes to Kalkbrenner's future in the NBA, Utah is a place that could afford him some real opportunity to play and play real minutes right away behind Walker Kessler. And I think specifically for Kalkbrenner, his value as a rim lob finisher, his value around the rim as a play finisher in general is quite high. I think you could very easily envision him in kind of a lesser Walker Kessler offensive role. And then Kalkbrenner, one thing that the Jazz did allow Kessler to do was experiment with shooting threes this year. Kalkbrenner is someone who can probably pay off some of those opportunities as well, as somewhat of a skilled big man who can step up behind the three-point line a little bit. Of course, passes the ball quite well too. And I think if you go back to Kalkbrenner playing off of Baylor Shireman a few seasons ago, not this past college season, but the year before that, Kalkbrenner's ability to finish as a lob threat, I think, gives Jakucionis another kind of different play finisher to work with there too early in their NBA careers together. Very interesting draft so far from Utah. They still have a couple of second-round picks that we'll talk about later in this video as well. We have a trade to announce. The Orlando Magic and Atlanta Hawks make a big trade, and this one, I'll admit, is a little bit of a head-scratcher for me here from Atlanta, but we are going to talk about the possible long-term upside for it for the Hawks. The Orlando Magic walk away with Trae Young and pick number 22 in this draft. A very, very strong package for Orlando. While, yes, it's a lot of money committed to Trae Young, Franz Wagner, and Paolo Banchero long term, Trae Young gives them an offensive initiator, three-point shooter, and player that I think will significantly, drastically improve the Magic's offense. They get pick number 22 in this deal as well, which is the upcoming draft pick here. In Atlanta, they do have to eat Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's contract, but they do get some other very interesting players in this deal. Jonathan Isaac, we talked about Atlanta really evolving their team defense over the last couple of years. They now get the best per-minute defender in the entire NBA in Jonathan Isaac, and I say that without a shadow of hesitancy. When Jonathan Isaac is on the court and healthy, he is flat out the best defender in the league. He can guard 1 through 5. He is legitimately the only player in the league that can really seriously do that. He can shut down big men. He can shut down point guards. He can do everything. He can hedge. He can switch. He can play dry. Jonathan Isaac is a one-of-one type defender in the league. And for Atlanta to get him, it gives them another defensive weapon. They also walk out with Anthony Black, a very good defensive guard, someone with elite positional size, really good playmaking attributes, and I think he is developing as a shooter from his first couple of years in the NBA. I think we have seen some pretty significant growth in not only his confidence, but his actual three-point success rate as well. And then Goga Bitadze, someone who I think is a very underrated big man. This is a value contract for Atlanta. I maybe am low-key talking myself into this for the Hawks a bit. Now, I do think the Hawks would be very offensively challenged after making this kind of trade. I don't think they would score enough points to really win a lot of games in the NBA, and not having their own draft picks makes this kind of questionable. But they do get the pick number 25 here. They get a future first in 2029 completely unprotected, and they get 2 second-round picks in this draft as well. So all in all, I don't really love this trade for Atlanta, but their defense would be really, really darn good, but their offense would be abysmal. And then Orlando, a team that already has a great defense, their offense just got a heck of a lot better with Trae Young, who was one of the top 2 guys in points created this year. Him and Jokic right at the top of the list in the NBA and when it comes to scoring and assisting the basketball. So Orlando gets a huge upside player in Trae Young, and I think this is a no-brainer deal for the Magic, who now at number 22 are on the clock as well. We're going to take it back over to RTAC 123 to see who he has the Magic going with here at pick number 22 after drafting Rasheer Fleming at number 16 earlier.
With the 22nd pick in the NBA draft, the Orlando Magic select Noah Pender.
So, Noah Penda out of Le Mans comes off the board, and now you think, okay, well, they drafted Rasheer Fleming, they drafted Noah Penda, who has a little bit of that playmaking juice, but of course is a defensive-minded prospect first. The Magic now, after trading Anthony Black, trading away Jonathan Isaac in that most recent deal, they've been replenishing some of those absences now. Rasheer Fleming, I think, can sit very, very well into the Jonathan Isaac role, gives you probably a little bit more offensive skill than Jonathan Isaac will ever have. But again, probably not nearly as good defensively as Isaac because of just how special Isaac can be as a player. But Noah Penda fits in well here as another point of attack perimeter defender, has been very successful on the ball in the LNB Pro A as an isolation defender. I think Penda, all things considered, a very good athlete, very functional in a lot of tools. The shooting will still, of course, be the big swing skill for him. There is some playmaking juice. There's some off-the-dribble creation that is quite fascinating. This is an Orlando Magic type pick for sure, and I think Orlando, one of the big winners of this overall mock draft, walking away with Trae Young, still being able to draft Noah Penda and Rasheer Fleming in this class. Very, very great draft from them so far. Magic, one of the big winners here of the mock draft up to this point. Pick number 23, the Indiana Pacers on the clock, and Azrael PC, one of the moderators for the Utility Sports Discord server, again, links in the description, go join, was running his favorite team here, the Indiana Pacers. Azrael PC, always appreciate you. Thank you again for all of your efforts. And let's see who he has the Pacers taking with pick number 23.
With the 23rd pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the Indiana Pacers select Cedric Coward from Washington State University.
So, Cedric Coward ultimately finds a home here in Indiana, and I love this fit for the Pacers specifically. You think about the offensive creation that they already have. Andrew Nembhard, someone who steps up in a big way in the postseason. You think about Tyrese Halliburton, one of the best offensive engines in the entire world because of his selflessness, the willingness to get off the basketball early, the decision making when it comes to limiting turnovers and just creating high opportunity chances. Cedric Coward, someone who can pay a lot of that off, specifically with his shooting ability, where he shot the ball very, very well in the 6-game sample he had for Washington State this past year, and then really solidified that at the NBA Draft Combine, where he shot the ball even better than Trey Johnson in drills. So Cedric Coward, I think, is one of the biggest risers from the end of the college season to where he is now in the eyes of draft and talent evaluators. And I think specifically going forward, if he's able to stay healthy, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for him to land in a team context and a team setting that's going to, I think, really maximize his skill set as a play finisher. Of course, measured him with a 7'2" wingspan. I think he can get after it defensively as well a bit. And for the Pacers here, this is a player who I think is going to fit their team very, very smoothly, very well. So Azrael PC, I think he did a great job here and hit this one out of the park at 23. Pick 24, the Oklahoma City Thunder on the clock. Beglin here again after drafting Collin Murray-Boyles at number 15. At number 24, he comes out and drafts Neek Clifford out of Colorado State, an older prospect, but one who is a definite ready-made contributor in the NBA. Colorado State did a little bit of everything, was one of their primary go-to options. Led the team in scoring, of course, was very effective on the basketball, showcased a lot of shot making, and the three-point shot has really stabilized after a few really rough seasons for Colorado and the Buffaloes. After transferring to the Colorado State Rams, Neek Clifford has really cemented his three-point shooting and has found some significant consistency with that. And I think that's going to be a huge selling point to NBA teams. While yes, he's an older prospect, and we've seen guys like Chris Duarte in the past have successful beginning of their careers and then really never progress or develop past that. Neek Clifford, I think with his physical gifts, athletic traits, the fact that he projects to be a plus defender in the NBA, and his combination of scoring, three-point shooting, and playmaking feel makes him such an interesting fit here for a variety of teams. And I think specifically Oklahoma City, Neek Clifford kind of just fits that team identity perfectly. Walking away with Collin Murray-Boyles and Neek Clifford in this draft, I think is a very, very strong haul for Oklahoma City at picks 15 and 24, respectively. Moving on to pick 25, here's the new look Atlanta Hawks again. After drafting Thomas Sorber at 13, this team defense, again, like I said, has gotten way stronger. Now at 25, we'll see where they ultimately go. For Jalen Hives, they draft guard Nolan Traore out of France, and I think this is specifically a Trae Young replacement type pick for Jalen Hives. After trading Trae Young away, again, I said it, I have questions about this team offense, and while Traore is not going to help the team defense a ton in year one, he does have great positional size, and I think his downhill juice and playmaking is something that Atlanta could look to weaponize, especially with Quinn Snyder, who is one of the better offensive masterminds in basketball, very creative in his play design and offensive half-court structure. I think Traore could be a long-term developmental piece here for the Hawks, one that does make quite a bit of sense for them. I think there's been significant growth throughout the course of this season where he has, for the most part, struggled playing professional basketball over in France. But I think with everything kind of in mind here for Traore, you are looking at a player who is still, with his positional size, downhill juice, he's got a very quick first step, can get 2 spots on the floor where he puts team defenses in a bind, and then can pass over the top of the defense. I think we've seen some real growth in him as a weak side cross-court passer this year, something that a year ago he wasn't really doing with high volume. I think he's doing it better and more often now. And then he also, of course, one thing he has done quite well for a while is utilize the pocket, utilize rollers. So Sorber, Edgecombe, Jalen Johnson, one of the best short rollers in the NBA. I think there's a lot of stuff to work with here for Nolan Traore, and the Hawks obviously have now built up an incredible team defense as well. Pick number 26, back to the Philadelphia 76ers here, and Osa Ray with this pick after drafting Adou Thiero at number 19, making that big trade for Nick Claxton and Cam Johnson earlier. The Sixers here now at 26 will select Liam McNeely out of UConn. I think Liam McNeely really restored a lot of faith in his draft stock at the Combine. Shot the ball quite well in shooting drills, measured in significantly well, I think just kind of solidifying what a lot of people were expecting for him measurement-wise. And when it comes to Philadelphia, if you're looking for a play finisher, three-point shooter, floor stretcher, Liam McNeely can really star in the off-the-bench role behind Cam Johnson, where, hey, Cam Johnson comes out the court, let's get another shooter on the floor behind him. And Liam McNeely, one of the better stationary standstill catch-and-shoot guys in this entire draft class. Great positional size when you go back to his Montverde Academy tape. Watching him play off of Derik Queen, watching him play off of Cooper Flagg, watching him play off of Asa Newell there, some of the very talented players that Montverde had. Liam McNeely thrived in an off-ball, catch-and-shoot, space-the-floor role. And I think Philadelphia here with Maxey, McCain, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton, with obviously Joel Embiid, and at 19, Adou Thiero, Liam McNeely slots into a role that is very easy and projectable for him, and I think it makes this fit very remarkable. I think Osa Ray had a pretty strong draft, all things considered. I love that trade at getting out of pick number 3 for the assets and pieces he got, and then walking out with Adou Thiero and Liam McNeely as well is just icing on the cake for Philadelphia in this mock draft. Pick 27, Agapito back on the clock at this one. Remember, the Nets have been active in this mock draft so far, getting Ace Bailey at pick 3 after a trade, drafting Khaman Maluach at pick number 8, and now at pick number 27, Agapito has the opportunity to go back out and address another big need for this Nets team. Let's see where Agapito has the Nets going with 27.
With the 27th pick in the 2025 Utility Sports mock draft, the Brooklyn Nets select Hugo Gonzalez from Real Madrid, Spain.
So, Hugo Gonzalez out of Real Madrid, Spain is the pick here for Brooklyn. And I think Agapito specifically is looking at the long-term potential. Again, that has been kind of the main storyline for the Nets in this draft with the way Agapito has run the team, taking young, developable players, and Hugo Gonzalez has all of that in his game. A very interesting and intriguing long-term dribble, pass, shoot type prospect where he's got respectable positional size, can finish above the rim, has functioned as a cutter, play finisher a bit. And I think if you're looking for long-term growth, you're imagining some of the playmaking skills and tools that he has, the ability to attack closeouts, attack off the dribble a bit, get 2 feet to the paint and then make decisions from there. And then the question really long-term is how well that shot really solidifies. If you're a believer in his shot, you could definitely justify taking him in the top 24, 25 picks in this draft. If you're a little bit more hesitant on the shot, you might have him outside the top 30. And I think that's going to be one of the big questions for him as his career pans out and as he continues to grow and develop as a young player. If his shot solidifies, cements, and really projects to be a very valuable tool to an NBA offense, Hugo Gonzalez can really be a player that returns great value at pick number 27 here for Brooklyn. Moving on to pick number 28, the Boston Celtics here were run by big-time Celtics fans, Stingy, in the Discord mock draft. And Stingy, with the 28th overall pick, had the Boston Celtics select Joan Berenger from Zedavita Olympia. And I think for Berenger specifically, playing in a professional league, you look at the numbers, the analytics, there is a lot to love. And I think Berenger is a serious candidate to get drafted even higher than pick number 28. We'll see where he ultimately goes on draft night. But wow, what an interesting prospect. Gaudy block rate. His blocks per minute is through the roof. Very productive. Gets on the offensive glass, gets on the defensive glass well. Extremely athletic. I think this is a player who there is a ton of perceived value in this pick as a play finisher, rim protector, rim running archetype of big man. And for the Celtics, who have a lot of questions about their roster moving forward, extremely expensive. Kristaps Porzingis dealing with somewhat of a mystery illness at this point in time. There's obviously theories out there on Twitter about what that might be. I'm not going to comment on that. But all things considered, I think with Berenger specifically, the Celtics, who have Al Horford, an older player at this point that you probably don't want to bank on for the next 4 years, you're looking at Berenger being maybe the next iteration of Celtics starting center play. We'll see what happens. Obviously, they have Luke Cornett, they have Xavier Tillman, but I think Berenger is someone who projects to be a better rim protector than either of them at the very best of his abilities down the road. Pick number 29 is prefaced by a big-time trade. Let's take it to Bear and see what this trade is.
The Denver Nuggets have made a trade with the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns are trading Kevin Durant and pick 29 to the Denver Nuggets, while the Denver Nuggets are shipping out Michael Porter Jr., Zeke Naji, Christian Braun, Deron Holmes, Jalen Pickett, and a 2031 lottery-protected first-round pick.
What a crazy trade. The Denver Nuggets strike gold here, making a big-time trade for future first-ballot Hall of Famer Kevin Durant, and they also walk away with pick number 29 in this draft, and Phoenix gets a collection and plethora of talent, youth, and depth to fill out their roster around Devin Booker. Kevin Durant to the Nuggets with that pick number 29, and the Suns get Michael Porter Jr., one of the better three-point movement volume shooters in the NBA, someone who rebounds extremely well for his position. They have to eat Zeke Naji's contract, unfortunately, but they get Christian Braun, who had a huge breakout season in his starting role for the Denver Nuggets. That is clearly a huge get for Phoenix in this trade. Deron Holmes II, the first-round pick last year that Denver drafted, I think after rupturing his Achilles, obviously a rehab long road back to the NBA for him. But if he can actually reach his potential, what he projected to be before that draft, this is a really strong acquisition, again, for Phoenix into their center play. Jalen Pickett, a young player who can definitely contribute for the Suns as well in the depth compartment. And a 2031 first-round lottery-protected pick. So the Suns, while yes, they do mortgage pick number 29 in this deal as well, the Suns ultimately walk out with a really thick collection of depth around their star talent in Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. And then the Nuggets, very clearly, one of the shortcomings of this team over the years has been the lack of a true superstar or all-star caliber player around Nikola Jokic. He was yet to play with an actual all-star teammate. Kevin Durant will end that streak, and the Nuggets get pick number 29. One of the other shortcomings with this team has been the lack of reliable shooting around Jokic. And while yes, Michael Porter Jr. has been the Nuggets' most reliable shooter, Kevin Durant is clearly on another level as a shooter, shot maker, and scorer in the half court. And for that reason, I think Denver, it's a risky trade. It's a big trade that sacrifices a lot of Denver's remaining depth that they had. But Kevin Durant and pick number 29 go a long way in addressing some of the flaws in this current team. And at pick number 29 now, we'll have Bear announce this pick for Denver.
The Denver Nuggets will be selecting national champion from the Florida Gators, Walter Clayton Jr., to pair up with Nikola Jokic.
So, national champion Walter Clayton Jr., one of the more fun shooting prospect bets in this entire draft class, goes at pick number 29 to Denver. And I had just talked about how the Nuggets needed more shooting around Nikola Jokic. They get it here with Walter Clayton Jr., adding in both Kevin Durant and Walter Clayton Jr. around a core of Nikola Jokic, Russell Westbrook, Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon does have me quite intrigued about the offensive potential that the Nuggets will have next year. I do think there will be some defensive shortcomings for sure. This Nuggets team defense will be quite limited, but the offensive potential, the offensive scoring is going to be gaudy and impressive. And I think for the Nuggets specifically, that is what Bear was betting on here for Denver, walking away with both Kevin Durant and Walter Clayton Jr. in a simultaneous move, I think is a very, very strong overall point for Denver. While yes, it's hard to give up on Christian Brown, there's going to be new management there in Denver. Of course, Calvin Booth, Michael Malone both fired at the end of the regular season. The Nuggets ultimately reshaping their roster, maybe valuing three-point shooting a bit more, and walking away with Durant and Clayton Jr. Not a bad start to that kind of philosophy at all. Pick number 30 now. The LA Clippers, the final pick of the first round, unlimited on the clock for them, and has the Clippers ultimately selecting guard Ben Saraf out of Ratio Farm. He falls a little bit in this mock draft, but I do think Saraf is a very talented player, and I think is a very good fit for the Los Angeles Clippers, specifically with his ability to handle the basketball, make reads, pass the basketball over to weak side shooters, specifically weaponizing the weak side corner extremely well. I think that's going to create a lot of swing opportunities, generating closeouts and rotations. I think Saraf specifically is a very underrated player. You know, for everyone who's super high on Noah Essengue, I want you to go look at who's been setting up Noah Essengue, who's throwing him the lobs, who's hitting him on backdoor cuts, who is really creating some of those rotations for him to attack closeouts. And while, yes, Essengue has the skills and tools to maximize those advantages, Saraf is the one who's creating a lot of them, especially over there in Germany for Ratio Farm Ulm. You go back to his FIBA U18 tape, he was absolutely dominant, garnered MVP honors at the World Cup. I think Saraf specifically is such a fun young player, and I think with his skill set is going to stand out in a big way for the Clippers as an off-the-bench guard creator for them behind James Harden. And I think the fact that he's left-handed as well creates another little advantage for the Clippers where they don't have to change the direction of their play design, whether it's Harden or Saraf in the game handling the basketball. Now moving into the second round. Again, this was a 2-round mock draft in the Discord. This one we won't fly through each pick individually, but we will take a look at bunches of picks in here, specifically starting with the picks 31 through 36. And I think this is a very fascinating situation that plays out here. Will Riley fell to the second round. Don't think that will actually happen. Love that pick for Minnesota, though. If he's there, oh my gosh. Drake Powell at 32, I thought a really, really strong get for Boston. A few years ago, we saw them take specifically Jordan Walsh in the second round. I think Drake Powell, someone who has really great point of attack defensive skills. Very valuable there. Look at Charlotte, walking with Maxime Reynaud, another guy who fell to the second round that I don't think ultimately will. I think he will be a first-round pick. In fact, if I was picking at 21 for Utah, I would have taken Reynaud over Kalkbrenner at that spot. And then 34, Kobe Bryant, one of the most functional players in the entire draft, can really shoot the piss out of the basketball. I love that for them. Philadelphia walks away with LeBaron Philon, someone who can be a defensive event creator for them in the backcourt. And then one of my other favorite picks I want to talk about here, Yaxel Lindeberg at 39 to Toronto. Now, if he doesn't get a first-round promise, there's a good chance that he returns to Michigan. The other day, he did say it was about a 60% likelihood he returns to college and plays for the Michigan Wolverines, and you probably can understand why. With NIL, he would make more money there. It doesn't make a lot of sense for him to come to the NBA draft if he's not going to be a top 20 pick. So I think all things considered, Yaxel Lindeberg might withdraw from the NBA draft. We'll see what ultimately happens. Of course, he's getting intel. His agent's talking to teams, trying to figure out what the best option is for them long term. But I do like Yaxel to Toronto a lot. I want to talk about Cam Jones to Detroit too. The Pistons still needing another ball handler. They get an experienced one here with Cam Jones out of Marquette. Someone who can get to his spots on the court, definitely can look to score the ball. Not the best creator of offense for others, in my opinion, but I definitely think there is some value to extract there. And I think in the NBA game specifically, he'll probably be able to adjust his game for Marquette. He had to be more of a go-to scorer for them. And shout out to Brady as well for making that selection. Brady's been watching the channel for so long. Really do appreciate you, Brady. for your continued support on the channel. I want to hear you guys' thoughts on these second round picks as well. Comment your favorite second round picks down below in the comment section. Picks 41 through 50. Yannick Niederhauser, one of the biggest winners of the G League Elite Camp and then ultimately NBA Combine, measured in extremely well, impressed with his physical gifts and tools, and played quite well in the Combine scrimmages. So Vibrant Red, drafting him here at 41 for Golden State was quite strong. Alex Tui at 42 of the Kings gives them another guy who can really shoot the ball, wins with effort, wins with attention to detail. I think that was a quite strong pick. Then you look at someone like Hanson Yang, a real attention drawer as well throughout the Combine process, coming out of the CBA. I mean, what a great Combine for him. Showcased the skill, touch, shooting prowess a bit in the Combines, scrimmages, showcased obviously some great playmaking tools too, and his back to the basket game. I thought that was a really great pickup for the Portland Trailblazers there by Agapito, especially after trading away DeAndre Ayton in that Giannis deal, looking to address some skilled big man play with Hanson Yang. I thought made some really good sense. Chaz Lanier stays in the state of Tennessee with the Memphis Grizzlies here from Benson. I thought that was a very strong pick for the Grizzlies, getting a shooter in the backcourt. Lanier had a very, very strong Combine as well. And then Dylan Rad going with Dink Pate for his New York Knicks. I thought another interesting pick. A 6'7" guard who can handle the ball, create out of the mid-range a little bit. Very Sean Livingston-esque, honestly, Dink Pate is. But again, the game has changed a bit. That kind of shot isn't as valued anymore. And I don't think Dink Pate is nearly as skilled either as Sean Livingston actually was. So, kind of a Sean Livingston light, so to speak, there for the Knicks at pick number 50. Then we go into the final 10 picks here. Rocco Zikarsky, a 7'4" big man, goes to the Clippers. Definitely can give them some long-term rim protection. I like that pick by Unlimited. Mark Sears at 52 to Phoenix. Just love this selection for them. The Suns obviously revamped their roster with that Durant trade we saw just a few moments ago. Getting Mark Sears here, one of the more established guards in this entire class, can really pass, move the ball. One player who did go undrafted that I don't think will go undrafted was Ryan Nembhard, a player who I think is going to return value to a team. Had a gaudy assist-to-turnover rate in college. Going to be an NBA guard for sure. Should not have gone undrafted. Tyrese Proctor at 55 to the Lakers, I really like. Someone who has good, respectable positional size, can be another player who handles the ball, initiates some offense, but can really shoot it off the ball. And I think that's what stood out this year, playing off of Cooper Flagg. Jameer Watkins definitely has some defensive potential here. The Hawks going with another defensive-minded player. Vlad Golden at number 60 for Utah, I think, is interesting. And then Isan Almanza at 54 to Indiana, a pick that I find quite fascinating. The Pacers have some questions about long-term center play behind Miles Turner if they're able to keep him. Isan Almanza, to me, one of the more interesting short-roll prospects in this entire draft. Doesn't really get talked about enough. I think there's some significant value there to maybe play into, and I think Indiana is going to be the team offensive context that can really maximize that. So all in all, I mean, quite fun. What an overall mock draft here. I hope you guys really have enjoyed. And thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content. If you want to be a part of that Discord, again, link is in the description. Feel free to leave some comments down below. Thanks y'all so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.